Okay, let's unpack this. When you picture Elvis Presley, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For so many people, it's got to be Graceland.
Absolutely, that iconic mansion, yeah. It's almost synonymous with the king himself.
Totally. But beyond just the image, Graceland was really the heart of his personal life, wasn't it?
It really was. And that's what we're diving into today.
We want to get past the legend, the jumpsuits.
Right, and understand him through the stories of people who actually knew him intimately. We're using Elvis by the Presleys as our guide here.
Which is great because you get Priscilla's view, Lisa Marie's, even his cousin Patsy's, different angles.
Exactly. These first-hand accounts, they paint such a vivid picture of his life off stage.
So our mission, really, is to figure out what Graceland and family truly meant to Elvis. Get a feel for his personality, his inner world.
Yeah, what mattered when the spotlight wasn't on him?
And it becomes clear pretty quickly Graceland wasn't just bricks and mortar.
Not at all. It was deeply woven into who he was. Priscilla herself said, who can think of Elvis without thinking of Graceland? It's that intertwined.
Right. She called it his refuge from the storms of life, a place where he hoped, maybe dreamt, of raising a family and just finding some simple peace.
And those little details make it so tangible, don't they? Like the gold-plated phone or having a remote control way back in 1957.
Wow, 57, that's early.
Yeah. It grounds that idea of home, makes it feel real, not just a concept. It shows how much that physical space meant.
And, well, the book points out he didn't always find that perfect peace there, did he?
No, he didn't. But the key thing, as Priscilla notes, is that he never stopped trying. He kept coming back to it.
That's really quite poignant. It symbolized his hopes for a happy life. That's why he always returned. It wasn't just a house.
Exactly. It represented something deeper. For someone living under that kind of intense spotlight, having a sanctuary isn't just nice, it's essential.
A fundamental need, yeah. And speaking of anchors, family was obviously huge for him.
Paramount. Patsy shares this letter he wrote from Germany during his army days. It's incredibly moving.
What does it say?
He talks about being freezing cold, feeling sick, just desperately homesick. It's not the confident superstar image at all.
Just a young guy missing home.
Totally. He mentions this cherished Christmas memory with his Aunt Gladys and says flat out that family is everything. It
Right.
really hits you.
You can feel that vulnerability. And then Lisa Marie's memories, they bring Graceland to life in a different way, right? More vibrant, maybe.
Yeah, full of energy, all centered around her dad. Life kind of revolved around his schedule.
Like the horse riding, the golf carts.
And the kitchen being like Grand Central, she called it. Cooks on call all the time because he kept such late hours.
Living life on his own terms within those walls.
Pretty much. And even the staff felt like family. Lisa Marie remembers Pauline, one of the staff, sitting by her bed when she was scared.
That's sweet. It shows that sense of community there. Plus, all the Southern food, keeping those roots strong.
It was all part of creating this world around him.
Yeah.
Comfort, connection, and the thing about his mother's clothes.
Oh, that detail. Priscilla finding that room full of Gladys's things untouched.
Yeah. It just speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About how deeply he loved her, how long he held on to that memory. It wasn't just sentimentality.
No, it was profound, a real connection preserved.
It makes you think about those primary bonds, how powerful they are, no matter how famous you become.
Now, Lisa Marie, she also gave a pretty unfiltered view of his personality, didn't she?
Oh, definitely. She said there was no facade. If he was crabby, you knew it. If he was angry,
You really know it.
apparently. His temper could be intense. But then, so could his charisma. His mood set the tone for the whole house.
It's a reminder that these huge stars are still human, with moods that affect everyone around them.
Absolutely. And then you get those classic Elvis stories. The impulsive generosity.
Like the pony just appearing in the yard for Lisa Marie.
Exactly. Or the midnight puppy run where suddenly everyone got a puppy.
No way. Just like that.
Just like that. It shows his desire to create fun, these spontaneous moments of joy for his inner circle. Maybe it was his way of building that stable family feeling he craved.
Priscilla mentioned those two universes, didn't she? The normal world and then Elvis's world.
Yeah. And once you were in his world, loyalty was everything. You did what you could to stay there.
It sounds quite insular, that kind of fame. You create your own reality.
Very much so. And part of that reality was this amazing extended family living at Graceland. Like Grandma Minnie Mae, Dodger.
Dodger. Patsy's description of her is incredible. The matriarch loving the attention.
And the nickname came from dodging balls as a kid. Patsy paints such a picture. The hair bun, the funky glasses, dipping snuff.
The ruffled dresses and ornate aprons, and pretending she couldn't hear but catching every whisper.
Classic. Elvis apparently adored her. She was this non-judgmental presence, a real comfort.
Priscilla even slept in her room sometimes when Elvis was away. Found strength there.
These grounding figures were so important in that environment. Dodger offered that unconditional acceptance, maybe.
And then there was Aunt Delta. Wow. What a character.
Oh, Aunt Delta. Priscilla remembers her wandering around in rollers and a nightgown and shooting at tourists.
Shooting at tourists? You're kidding.
Nope. Apparently so. Patsy talks about her wild past with a riverboat gambler husband. She brought a whole different energy.
Lisa Marie called her a diabetic alcoholic, hysterically funny, but also kind of terrifying.
Yeah, insulting, feared, the gun, the Harlequin romances. It's quite a mix.
And telling fans on the phone, Aunt Delta's dead, that's dark humor.
It really is. Graceland was definitely not short on personalities.
Yeah.
You wonder how these big characters shape the whole vibe there.
But even Delta had the softer side, right? Taking Lisa Marie for secret candy runs.
Exactly. Those contradictions make them feel so real. Everyone adding their own flavor to the Graceland mix.
Okay, so if Elvis loved giving gifts, Christmas must have been his absolute peak time.
Oh, for sure. Patsy said it was his escape from all the career pressure. He could just be. And Priscilla describes his enthusiasm. It sounds infectious. The lights getting more and more every year, inspired by Beverly Hills.
The Santa on the lawn, the nativity scene, and apparently he loved snow.
Like a kid. Yeah. Building snowmen, making snow ice cream, just pure joy.
And Uncle Vernon dressed as Santa, convincing little Lisa Marie he was the real deal.
Those traditions create such warmth, don't they? And the music in the piano room, Elvis and Vernon singing gospel. Precious Lord, amazing grace.
Beautiful. And the gifts kept coming. Priscilla got a horse domino.
Lisa Marie got Elton John records. Elvis wasn't sure about Elton at first, apparently.
But he came around.
Yeah, eventually. They even had some kind of sledding accident together later on.
Seriously, Elvis and Elton John sledding, that's a picture.
Right. And the horse buying wasn't just for Priscilla. He bought horses for everyone.
The whole gang. Wives, family, friends.
Yep. Custom gear, everything. Turned the barn into this massive stable. Another example of that over-the-top generosity, even his own horse, Rising Sun, was apparently really stubborn. Figures.
Patsy really got it right, didn't she? He just loved seeing people's reactions to his gifts.
It was about creating that happiness for others. And Lisa Marie's stories, too. Renting the whole skating rink, closing the fairground just for them.
Creating these special, almost magical moments away from the crowds, which kind of brings us to how Priscilla first even got into that world. It sounds pretty unlikely.
It really does. Her family's in Germany, military posting. She wasn't even allowed to watch him on TV initially. Paul, her stepdad, was resistant.
Forbidden fruit indeed. So how did they meet?
Through another serviceman, Curry Grant, who knew Elvis and offered to introduce them, said Elvis was homesick.
And that first meeting, Bad Nauheim, sounds like a scene from a movie.
Totally. Vernon's there, the place is crowded, Brenda Lee's playing, then Elvis walks in. Red sweater, tan slacks.
And she was only 14, but he thought she was older.
Yeah. They talked about music, Fabian, Ricky Nelson, what kids were listening to, found common ground over Mario Lanza. He seemed nervous about his popularity, even then.
And he opened up to her about missing his mom, feeling lonely.
Quite a bit, yeah. Eating bacon and mustard sandwiches. Priscilla was struck by his vulnerability, his sweetness, good manners, an open heart, she felt.
And when he wanted her to stay longer, she didn't think it was a come-on.
No, more like he just wanted company. Curry had promised her dad he'd get her home on time, though. Foggy drive back.
Her parents must have been worried sick.
Understandably. But Elvis met them later, and he really charmed them.
How so?
Just his politeness. Sir, Captain, ma'am. Soft-spoken, seemed really sincere. Paul was impressed by his manners, his interest in Paul's military service.
And Paul asked him straight up, why Priscilla?
Yeah, why Celia? And Elvis said he felt comfortable with her, she seemed mature, and he promised he'd look after her. It really changed their perspective.
So their bond grew over those 7 months before he left Germany.
Deeply. Though Priscilla had her insecurities, and her mom, Anne, worried about her happiness.
And their relationship was chaste.
Completely. He called her little one,
Yeah.
emphasized her purity. But when he left Germany, the press descended.
The girl he left behind. That must have been tough.
Especially when he gave that slightly dismissive answer at the press conference back home. Though he did add, yes, there was someone. Subtle, but there.
Her mom told her to just forget him at that point.
Yeah. Elvis tried to downplay it too, saying it was no big romance, despite the media frenzy.
But then, contact resumed. After a long silence,
Exactly. Paul, her stepdad, noted it long periods of nothing, then these marathon all-night phone calls, and Elvis started sending records.
returned to sender, fittingly. What an emotional roller coaster for her.
Absolutely. Anne kept advising her to move on. He's a movie star now, glamorous co-stars. Priscilla just waited by the phone for the mail, seeing him in movies like Blue Hawaii while she's stuck in school in Germany.
Must have been agonizing. 2 years of that.
2 years of unpredictability. Heartbreak, then ecstasy when contact happened. Until that phone call.
The one where he said, I have to see you?
That was it. Set a first-class ticket to L.A., then the whole process of convincing her parents again.
He must have been incredibly persuasive.
He really was. Long talks, detailed itinerary, assurances of chaperones. Eventually they agreed.
So off she goes to LA, first impression.
Overwhelming luxury. His Bel Air villa was a world away from Germany. He greeted her with, "Let me look at you, you're all grown up." And his hair was dyed black by then.
And he seemed genuinely happy to see her.
Apparently so. But even alone in his bedroom, he maintained that commitment to her. Purity.
Still. Wow, that must have been confusing for her.
Incredibly. Anne said she was in total disarray when she got back to Germany. Paul was blunt about her sadness. The whole family was baffled.
But she didn't give up, begged her mom to convince Paul to let her move there.
And finally it happened. Christmas 1962. Patsy remembers Vernon and Dee escorting her to Memphis. Elvis wanted to drive her through the Graceland gates himself.
To see her reaction.
Exactly. His pride in Graceland, his love for her, Patsy saw it immediately.
And Priscilla felt like she was in a dream, seeing the Christmas lights.
Patsy noticed how relaxed Elvis was with her, said she thought Priscilla was his one true love. She became part of the Graceland life, hugged by Minnie Mae again. Felt like coming home.
So life at Graceland begins. Puppy named Honey, and sedatives for jet lag.
Yep, Placid Hills. Poor Dodger, the dog, apparently got into them once and was totally out of it.
Oh dear. And the fun continued. Roller derby at the skating rink.
Renting the whole place out, always needing that excitement. But the relationship had its challenges too. Elvis could be defensive, shift blame.
Making her apologize even if it wasn't her fault. That's tough.
Yeah. And the Chase relationship continued for a while, frustrating for her. But the emotional bond deepened. He talked about wanting serious acting roles, like Brando or Dean.
Dissatisfied with the movie career already.
Yeah, even with successes like Blue Hawaii. And he became insistent. She had to live with him in Memphis.
Which brings us back to convincing her dad. Paul must have put his foot down initially.
Very strongly. Priscilla understood his worries about Hollywood gossip. Anne was the key again.
And Paul had another serious talk with Elvis.
Yes. Elvis was respectful, laid out the plan, live with Vernon and Dee, not at Graceland initially, attend an all-girls Catholic school, always chaperoned, pledged to care for her, hinted at marriage down the line.
He covered all the bases.
He did. Convinced Paul his feelings were genuine. Priscilla was thrilled to finally leave Germany.
They went to LA first? Sightseeing in the rolls?
Yeah. But Paul kept focused on the arrangement school living situation. Elvis reassured him. Then Priscilla flew to Memphis with Paul, said goodbye, grateful for his trust. Her new life began.
And Elvis saw her as different from Hollywood types.
Completely. He valued her normal family, their loyalty, their privacy, and he had this idea of molding her.
Like a sculptor, guiding her into womanhood under his tutelage.
That's how Priscilla describes it. His delight was her delight. She wanted to please him, an unspoken agreement. She'd honor him, satisfy his needs.
She accepted that role.
Initially, yes. Her love deepened as she knew him better, even with the strangeness of his world.
But she was living this double life again, wasn't she?
Pretty much. Prim schoolgirl by day, Elvis's girlfriend by night, like in Germany. And Elvis kept Hollywood and Graceland separate, didn't really want her in L.A. much.
Which meant separations, longing to be with him, and this molding extended to her appearance, too, like Professor Higgins.
Exactly. He seemed to enjoy recreating her look. Took her shopping. Dictated colors, red, blue, turquoise, green, were his favorites and styles, like those tight gold lame gowns.
And the hair. High, almost Marge Simpson-like.
That's the description. Shorter skirts, darker eyeliner, heavier makeup, dyed jet black hair to match his.
Was she okay with all that?
Flattered at first, she says, but unhappy if her own taste clashed with his, and the late hours really messed with school. He gave her prescription pep pills, amphetamines, probably calling them helpers.
Oh, wow. No wonder school was tough. What about his Hollywood life? Did she eventually see more of it?
He didn't talk about it much initially. She had to push him. The reality wasn't glamorous. Luxurious houses, yeah, but impersonal, not like Graceland.
And fans always at the gates, some getting invited in.
Yeah, by the guys in the entourage. Priscilla felt uncomfortable. The bachelor pad vibe, casual sex seemed normal. She naturally wondered about his fidelity and Margaret, Ursula Andress.
And he didn't want her on set.
No. She understood later as an actress herself. He was apparently a quick study with scripts, though, reading them last minute.
Their routine in Bel Air sounds structured. Dinner at 6, TV, late-night motorcycle rides.
Very routine. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, gravy, watching Laugh-In, The Untouchables, Johnny Carson.
And the eccentricities continued in Hollywood. Scatter the monkey.
Oh, Scatter. His escapades were legendary. The Peeping Tom incident. They even built him private quarters.
A monkey with private quarters. Only Elvis. Patsy and Gigi lived there sometimes, too.
Yeah, but it wasn't as permanent as Graceland for them.
Were there any moments that bridged the Graceland-Hollywood divide?
Her parents visited once. Awkward at first. Then Elvis started playing bass. They had a jam session. Music broke the ice.
Nice. And the John Lennon message.
Yeah, sent via the boys, basically saying no Elvis, no Beatles. Elvis appreciated it, but didn't reciprocate with the visit.
Interesting. And Palm Springs became another escape hatch.
It did. The Colonel had a place there. Elvis liked the desert climate. Became their getaway from Hollywood.
But the Colonel's influence. It was always there, wasn't it? Often clashing with Elvis's artistic side.
Hugely influential. Business versus art, pretty much. Elvis didn't even want him on the movie sets.
The Colonel controlled the deals, limited his options. Elvis must have hated singing Old MacDonald.
He was furious. That was in double trouble. The Colonel would then whisk them off to Palm Springs when Elvis got too upset.
Damage control. Did Priscilla interact with the Colonel much?
She rebelled a bit against Mrs. Parker. The Colonel's wife wore miniskirts and thongs just to annoy her, maybe.
Right.
Mrs. Parker eventually thawed, though.
And the Colonel used Palm Springs to keep tabs on Elvis.
Seemed like it. Gather intel from the entourage. Worried about Elvis being bored or unfocused, but totally missed the artistic starvation, according to Priscilla.
Which might be why Larry Gellar's influence took hold then.
The timing was perfect. Elvis was discontented, searching. Larry represented that late 60s, early 70s counterculture, talking metaphysics, transcending the material world.
And Elvis was hooked.
Completely enraptured, Priscilla says. Long, private talks. Elvis emerging with stacks of books, The Prophet, Siddhartha, Autobiography of a Yogi.
The entourage must have been freaked out.
They were apprehensive, yeah. Priscilla went along with it, though it was more intellectual than, say, karate. Elvis just deeply needed new ways to understand things.
But the Colonel, horrified, especially the monastery idea.
Oh, yeah. Saw it as a direct threat to the money-making movies. Tried to undermine Larry, squash the whole spiritual quest. Priscilla thinks now it was fear of losing control.
But this seeking wasn't totally new, right? His childhood church.
Exactly. The Assembly of God in Tupelo. Those roots ran deep. This led them to the Self-Realization Fellowship.
Visiting the lake shrine, meditating.
Elvis was fascinated by the story of Yogananda passing, his body seemingly preserved. Priscilla felt he found some calmness in their meditation there. They met Brother Adolf, asked lots of questions.
And wanted to meet the leader, Sri Dayamata.
Yes, they visited the retreat on Mount Washington. Priscilla describes Dayamata as warm, peaceful, not intimidating. Elvis connected immediately.
What did he say to her?
Talked about his lifelong spiritual search, wanted to teach it to his fans.
And her response?
Wise counsel. Entertainer and spiritual teacher are different paths. Go slow, no shortcuts. Teacher requires full dedication.
But Elvis wanted a crash course.
Typical Elvis impatience. He respected her, but wanted quicker answers.
So, amidst all the searching, the engagement finally happened. Patsy thought Priscilla was his soulmate early on.
Yeah. The proposal was over Christmas. Elvis was in a good mood, used their code word fire eyes, got down on one knee with the ring.
And she said yes immediately. Despite the pills, moods, spiritual searching.
Instantly. Her love had grown deep. They wanted a private engagement, a quiet wedding, no circus.
But he was still having career blues, even after a Grammy for the gospel album.
Yeah, frustrated making 3 films a year, looking for distractions, which led to the Circle G Ranch idea.
Another impulsive move. For happiness.
Potentially. But money was tight, popularity dipping slightly his spending. Vernon was worried.
The ranch house was small, but Elvis wanted everyone there.
Of course. Bought trailers, trucks for the whole crew and families. Patsy City basically brought out Sears, moved everyone, including Grandma Minnie, down to Mississippi.
Wow. Did it bring tranquility?
Briefly. Then chaos. Fans found them. Vernon stressed about money. The Colonel showed up with the clam-baked script.
And Elvis needed the cash.
Reluctantly agreed. Back to Hollywood. Depression, weight gain followed. Then that serious fall in the bathroom concussion.
A wake-up call.
Seems like it. The Colonel took charge. End of career doubts, spiritual quest, books burned, Larry Geller sidelined to hairdresser. The focus shifted entirely to the wedding.
Handled by the Colonel, naturally, and kept totally secret.
Like a spy mission. Michelle, Priscilla's friend, described it that way. Rumors of Palm Springs, but it was Vegas, Aladdin Hotel suite, Nevada's Supreme Court Chief Justice officiating.
The press completely missed it. Paul was surprised.
Totally fooled. They flew on Sinatra's jet. Michelle was maid of honor, got a special ring from Elvis.
And Elvis gave her advice about marriage. Save yourself.
He did. Then back to Palm Springs for the consummation. Elvis carried her over the threshold singing the Hawaiian wedding song.
Sounds romantic, but you mentioned underlying issues lingered.
The book hints at it, yeah. Foreshadowing future problems despite the joy of the moment. But intertwined with all this was always the music.
He always said his movements were about rhythm, energy, not just the pelvis.
Right. His music was that blend, country, gospel, R&B. Patsy was even there for some early Sun sessions.
Lisa Marie talked about the prejudice against rock and roll, the pressure on him sounding black.
But emphasized his sincerity, his rebellion. Priscilla saw his offstage energy mirrored on stage. Body language like musical language. Spiritual element beneath the sexiness, like dancing in church, she felt.
And his musical taste was broad.
Incredibly. Patsy mentioned that. Priscilla remembered him obsessing over a Charles Boyer spoken word album. He loved diverse singers, used songs to say things he couldn't verbalize.
Then came the '68 comeback special, a turning point.
Huge. Priscilla and Patsy both said it reminded everyone why they loved him. He was back to being, first and foremost, a performer.
And the American Sound Sessions in Memphis followed, working with Chips Moman.
Yes, during that golden age of soul. He loved soul music, loved the spontaneity of those young Memphis musicians. Priscilla said he was never happier than in the studio then. A return to his roots.
You can hear it, can't you? Lisa Marie mentioned the excitement in the ghetto, Suspicious Minds.
Definitely. And In the Ghetto was risky. The Colonel hated it, the message, the connection to Black America. But Elvis insisted.
He overruled the Colonel on that one.
He did. Shows his conviction. Priscilla felt he was basically his own producer in the studio by then. Strong opinions on the final mix. The Suspicious Minds fade out story is famous.
Vegas became the next big phase, right? Expanded his reach again.
It did. But Vegas and touring, while an escape maybe, they worsened the sleep problems, the pill dependency.
Priscilla might have missed some warning signs then, focused on Lisa Marie.
It's possible, she reflects. Life was demanding. Which brings us to their marriage deteriorating and Lisa Marie's birth.
That trial separation request during her pregnancy, what a shock that must have been.
Terrible. 7th month. No real explanation. But then he just didn't leave, didn't mention it again. Strange.
And Lisa Marie's birth story. Elvis looking for cigars, eating while she's in labor.
The I Love Lucy comparison is perfect. His interactions with her as a kid, spankings, followed by massive guilt.
Patsy called her a little devil, a little Elvis.
Ornery, rebellious. Lisa Marie's own stories are wild. Telling the cook she was fired, racing golf carts, basement mayhem.
Threatening the entourage, the fan with the camera, the motorcycle prank.
Stink bombs, shooting fireworks, the snake incident, rattling toys, causing a hotel power outage. She had free reign while he slept in the mornings.
And Elvis flying the plane himself, casually announcing it.
Terrifying, and yet so Elvis, his scary temper, then singing with a puppet. Complex guy. But Priscilla stresses the special bond they had, his determination to stay connected even as the marriage ended.
The divorce itself sounds surprisingly amicable. October '73, holding hands.
Yeah, non-hostile. But Priscilla noticed his swollen hands then, felt something was wrong.
And Elvis called her mom right after, begging her to convince Priscilla to come back.
He did, desperate to keep the family together. Anne felt sad, but respected Priscilla's choice. Anne remembered his generosity fondly, though.
The TVs, Cadillac, Mustang, the Colt Python for Paul in Vietnam, the Longhorns. He introduced them to the Vegas audience, too.
Showed his affection. But Anne and Paul worried about his health on later visits. Even then, he wrote them that $10,000 check for their house.
Priscilla said he was hurting more after '73, denied being an addict because it was prescriptions.
Hated street drugs. His physician's desk reference detailed his usage, and the claim's 8th-degree black belt, federal agent, searching for respect, maybe.
And the Self-Realization Fellowship tried to reach out again, but Vernon stopped it.
Yeah, tore up the letters, fearing distraction from touring. Priscilla told Elvis about Diamata's concern. He was moved, but never called.
Another misconnection, like the Streisand movie A Star is Born.
Fell through because of the Colonel's deal-making. So, back to nonstop performing.
Michelle visited him in Vegas late 76. He was self-conscious about his hands.
Bloated, yeah. But still treated her like family. Anne and Paul's last visit was emotional, too. Elvis didn't want them to leave, gave them the check. Anne's worry grew. Priscilla's last memory was a goodnight kiss.
And then, August 16th, 1977, Priscilla had a premonition.
She did. Patsy's reflection is simple. He was human, did his back, had a big heart. Priscilla felt he abused his body, underestimated his emotional pain.
The news broke August 17th. Devastating.
Despite the fame, the wealth, there was loneliness, generosity, but some friends faded. His mother's early protectiveness, losing his twin, poverty, then immense wealth. It all shaped him.
Priscilla went back to Sri Diamata after his death.
Yes, Diamata offered comfort, said his powerful spirit lived on. Even small details, like loving Mountain Valley spring water on tour, it brings it back to earth. The book shares all these intimate stories, obsessions, passions. His legacy musically is undeniable.
So looking back at all this, what's the takeaway? Graceland and family, they weren't just side notes. They were absolutely central, weren't they?
Completely central. A source of comfort, sure, but also complexity, expectations. These relationships show us the man behind the icon, far more multifaceted than we often think.
And hearing these intimate stories, it really makes you reconsider Elvis, doesn't it? How does it change the way you, the listener, see him now?
It really does. And it raises bigger questions, too. Like, how do you maintain real connections under that kind of insane fame?
Yeah, that pressure must be immense. And maybe it highlights the fundamental power of family, of home, no matter who you are or what you have. Perhaps that's something to really mull over.
The balance between the public persona and the private self. It's a constant struggle for people in the spotlight. Exploring Elvis on this human level, maybe we connect more with the person, not just the legend.
Definitely. And if this deep dive has sparked your interest, there's always more to explore. His music, obviously, his spiritual journey, the perspectives of others who knew him, always more layers to uncover.